What happens when three of the most iconic automotive giants, BMW, Volkswagen, and Rolls-Royce, collide in a billion-dollar tug-of-war over the future of British luxury? Not a new dynasty, not a grand comeback, but instead a beautifully built machine that came and went almost unnoticed. A luxury car that launched with grace, vanished with barely a whisper, and left behind a trail of corporate drama, missed opportunities, and a legacy shrouded in misunderstanding. Its name? The Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph. A car that looked like royalty, drove like a dream, and yet disappeared faster than most people could learn how to pronounce Seraph. How could something so elegant and so promising become one of the most forgotten chapters in Rolls-Royce history? To understand the Silver Seraph, it helps to know what came before it. Before this sophisticated machine took its short-lived spotlight, there was the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit. This wasn't just some old model kicking around from a past era. It was a huge success for Rolls-Royce in its time, selling around 1,000 units a year. For a brand that never measured success by volume, that was a big deal. But even icons get old, and the Spirit, for all its dignity, was built on bones dating back to the Silver Shadow, an architecture from the 1960s. By the late 80s and early 90s, competitors like Mercedes-Benz were rolling out sleek modern S-classes, BMW was flexing with its tech-packed 7 Series, and Lexus had just walked into the party with a clean sheet and a playbook that said, "Luxury doesn't have to be unreliable." Suddenly, the Spirit didn't look timeless anymore. It just looked tired. Now, imagine sitting in the boardroom of Vickers, the defense company that happened to own Rolls-Royce at the time, developing a brand new Rolls-Royce from the ground up. That wasn't in the budget. The solution? Have Rolls-Royce and Bentley, then sister companies, share the same platform. Think of it like two posh cousins being told to bunk together at summer camp. The new car was going to be bold but built smart. That's where Graham Hull, Rolls-Royce's design chief, stepped in. Hull had a vision. He didn't want flash, he wanted finesse. Inspired by the flowing lines of the 1950s Silver Cloud, he crafted a silhouette that said, "I have money, but I'm not yelling about it." And he nailed it. The Silver Seraph looked like it could swallow a Jaguar XJ whole and still have room left for tea. It was massive, majestic, and yet whispered elegance rather than shouted excess. It had the presence of a cathedral on wheels, yet moved with the grace of a silk scarf in the wind. Every curve of its bodywork was a quiet rebellion against the sharp-edged aggression of its German rivals. Even parked, the Seraph looked like it had just glided in from another era, refined, deliberate, and unbothered by trends. The long bonnet, the flowing rear fenders, the near-silent shut of its doors, every detail oozed intention. It wasn't just designed to turn heads, it was meant to make them bow. But even Hull couldn't have total freedom. The Seraph had to share its platform with Bentley's upcoming Arnage. That meant a few compromises. The trademark Rolls-Royce grille, usually proud and upright, was softened a bit, almost like someone took a file to the edges of something sharp. And despite this subtle transformation, it still managed to wear its identity like a tailored suit. Around the same time, BMW began circling around Rolls-Royce, looking for a way into British luxury. The Germans weren't just bringing cash, they brought engineering muscle. BMW showed up with a flashy Bentley concept called the Java. And if one looks closely at the Seraph, hints of BMW's design and technology start becoming obvious. Instead of building a brand new electrical system from scratch, Rolls-Royce entered a friends with technological benefits kind of relationship with BMW. Bentley scored the powerful BMW twin-turbo V8. But Rolls-Royce, it went all in on the Bavarian crown jewel, the buttery smooth M73.4-liter V12. It was a quiet but strategic move, trading old-world quirks for cutting-edge reliability. The partnership meant fewer mysterious dashboard gremlins and a far more predictable driving experience. While purists grumbled about foreign influence, engineers knew they'd struck gold with an engine that never needed to shout to be impressive. Underneath all that handcrafted British charm, the Seraph had a heart that hummed with Bavarian precision. January 1998 rolled around, and with it came a significant milestone. For the first time in over 30 years, Rolls-Royce revealed an all-new model, the Silver Seraph. It was more than just a new car, it was a symbol. But was the world ready? Under the hood, the M73 V12 was a masterpiece. Calling it smooth is almost an insult. It idled with the silence of snowfall and cruised with the effortlessness of a glide. On paper, it pushed out 322 horsepower, which might not sound earth-shattering today, but in the late 90s, for a car of this size, it was solid muscle. And more importantly, it wasn't about speed, it was about serenity. At 50 miles per hour, the engine was barely a whisper. No rumble, no vibration, just that unmistakable Rolls-Royce poise. What made the Seraph even more surprising was how modern it felt. This wasn't just a facelifted Spirit with a smoother motor. The chassis was 65% stiffer than the old model. That meant no creaks, no dashboard rattles, and certainly no drama over bumps. The ride, still classic Rolls, but now with adaptive suspension. It floated like expected, but when the road asked for it, the suspension tightened up. Not track-ready by any means, but far more composed than its older siblings. Isn't it ironic that one of the smoothest cars ever built came from a brand that was smack in the middle of one of the messiest corporate fights in auto history? Because right when the Seraph made its debut, Vickers decided it was time to sell Rolls-Royce. Everyone assumed BMW had it in the bag. They had the relationship, the tech, and had already sunk millions into the Seraph. So BMW wrote a check for £340 million, expecting to go home with the keys. But out of nowhere, Ferdinand Piëch from Volkswagen stormed in, dropped £430 million on the table, and snatched up Rolls-Royce. Or at least, he thought he did. Here's where it gets messy. Volkswagen got the factory, the workers, the tooling, and even the Seraph design. But what they didn't get? The Rolls-Royce name, the double R badge, the spirit of ecstasy. Vickers had held onto the naming rights and sold them separately to BMW, meaning Volkswagen had bought the car, but not the brand. To make matters worse, BMW wasn't exactly feeling generous after being blindsided. They politely told VW that the V12 engines they'd been supplying, that deal was ending in a year. So now there was a Silver Seraph factory full of parts with no legal name and no engine. Cue one of the most awkward standoffs in car industry history. Eventually, it all got resolved, but not before making headlines. BMW took official ownership of Rolls-Royce in July 1998. Volkswagen walked away with Bentley, and everyone moved on. Sort of. BMW immediately started building an all-new factory at Goodwood to launch the next Rolls-Royce chapter, the Phantom 7. But the Silver Seraph, it never got invited to the party. It was a child of two parents who split up before deciding who got custody. And like many caught in the middle, it quietly disappeared. Only 1,570 Silver Seraphs were ever built before production ended in 2002. That makes it one of the rarest modern Rolls-Royce models ever. Some purists believe that's exactly why the Seraph matters. Despite the BMW engine and switchgear, yes, the same climate controls and radio buttons from a 90s 7 series, it still had that old Rolls soul, handmade in Crewe, wrapped in buttery leather, adorned with gleaming walnut and subtle chrome, a whisper of wealth rather than a shout. Inside, it might have borrowed a few bits from Bavaria, but once the seats embraced with that heated leather hug, no one cared. Everything felt intentional. Everything looked the part, and more importantly, it worked. The days of electrical gremlins were behind. No flickering gauges, no buttons quitting mid-drive, just smooth, effortless opulence. So why was the Silver Seraph misunderstood? Maybe because it arrived during a storm. Maybe because it was too quiet for its own good. Or maybe because people weren't ready to accept that a Rolls-Royce could be both old-world elegance and modern German precision in one package. Could it be that the Silver Seraph was too far ahead of its time, and yet somehow too rooted in the past? What's clear now, 2 decades later, is that the Seraph represents a fascinating moment in car history. A final, fleeting bridge between two eras. Before the Phantom's arrival rewrote the luxury playbook, the Seraph stood tall, graceful, understated, and tragically short-lived. Maybe, Just maybe that's exactly what made it special. Born from British hands, powered by German engineering, and caught in one of the strangest boardroom chess matches ever seen, it remains a misunderstood masterpiece. It didn't roar, it whispered, and like many things that burn briefly but brightly, it left behind a legacy not in volume but in character. If this story about the Silver Seraph gave a new perspective on a forgotten luxury legend, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the most fascinating stories the automotive world has to offer. And drop a comment below. Was the Silver Seraph ahead of its time, or was it destined to disappear?